In 2025, a small West African nation quietly made waves that rattled the world's agricultural order when President Ibrahim Traoré declared, "We are not withdrawing from the world, we are returning to ourselves." He triggered a food sovereignty chain reaction that the global soybean giants did not see coming. In this film, we trace how Burkina Faso's decision to halt subsidized U.S. soybean imports became a bold stand against global dependency, and how what began as a local move may reshape the food future of a continent. Stay with us, because by the end, you'll realize the real twist isn't just about soybeans, it's about who writes the rules of the next food era. The quiet before the storm. Why was something as mundane as soybeans suddenly a geopolitical trigger? In many corners of the world, soybeans seem unremarkable, yet in the heart of West Africa lies a hidden story. For years, the nation of Burkina Faso imported over 35% of its soybean-derived products, oil, feed additives from the United States. That meant local farmers found themselves locked out. They could not compete, with heavily subsidized imports flooding the market at lower cost. The consequence? A decline in local soybean cultivation, shrinking rural incomes, and a subtle form of economic dependency creeping in. Think of it this way: an entire agricultural value chain built by overseas surplus, rather than by soil, family farms, and local craft. The people of one rural province asked, "Why import what we once grew?" Meanwhile, global grain flows treated Africa less as markets of equals and more as outlets for surplus, and that imbalance was about to be challenged. The decision that broke the mold. How do you overturn a system that seems locked in? In 2025, President Traoré's government issued a seemingly simple order: a ban on new imports of subsidized U.S. soybeans. But beneath that decision lay months of preparation, and the symbolism was profound. They dubbed the operation Project Khalifa to restore the root. Over 18 months, the state quietly mobilized heirloom seeds stacked in cold storage, mobile solar-powered oil extraction units rolled out to remote villages, training sessions for tens of thousands of local farmers, and state-backed purchase guarantees to bolster domestic production. From the outside, it looked like a regional farm program. From the inside, it was a strategic gamble. Say no to structural dependency, and say yes to local renewal. Because once you stop importing the cheap feedstock, you force the question, can we grow, process, and control our own food destiny? The ripple that became a wave. A decision in one country can trigger tectonic shifts across a region. At first, the move was written off as symbolic. Analysts shrugged, but what followed surprised almost everyone. Within months, neighboring states began revising their import regimes. Some quietly paused their own subsidized feed imports. Others opened talks. The momentum grew into the framework of what the EU government called the AES AgriCore Initiative. Morocco, Mali, Niger, Guinea, these among the states invited to join a new regional vision. Grain reserves, shared processing facilities, transport corridors linking hinterlands to ports, all under a blueprint that would reduce exposure to external shocks. It was not just agricultural policy. It was economic defense. Because if the old system treated Africa as an outlet for surplus, this new system placed Africa as a co-architect of its own supply chain. Innovation in the field. Hook. What exactly does food sovereignty look like on the ground? One of the boldest moves, the launch of the agri-credit system. Imagine a digital token backed by national grain reserves. Farmers and cooperatives adopt it, get paid when they deliver into state-guaranteed purchase schemes. The system aligns incentives: grow more, process more, consume from within. In remote villages, solar-powered oil extraction units arrived. What once required large plants and expensive logistics could now be done at local cooperatives, retaining value in the village instead of shipping raw beans abroad. Over 100,000 farming families were enrolled before the ban officially took effect. By the time the imports stopped coming in, the infrastructure for action was already in place. Viewers often ask, is this just ideology? The answer, no. It's pragmatic. It's economic architecture built at grassroots, and it rewrites the bottom line. Value retained locally. The global angle and stakes. Why did Washington and global agribusiness sit up and take notice? On the surface, soybeans may appear as just another commodity. Yet globally, they are a strategic crop, used in feed, oils, additives, and increasingly in bio-based industries. A ban by one country may not upset markets immediately, but when replicated regionally, it threatens entrenched export models. For the U.S., whose farmers receive subsidies and whose markets are oriented outward, this shift in West Africa triggered alarm bells. What happens when the world's buyers say, "We will produce here instead"? The ripple effects touch trade, value chains, food security policies, and diplomatic leverage. Analysts now call this a hidden food war, because the battleground is not tanks and trenches but seedbeds, processing units, and policy pivots, the human face. Behind policy shifts are lives, farmers, families, communities. Meet Aicha. She lives in a village west of Ouagadougou. Her parents once grew soybeans, but gave it up because imported oils and feeds flooded the market. With Project Khalifa, she received seeds, training, a cooperative's membership, and for the first time in years, she saw real income from her plot. In another small town, women operate a mobile oil press unit. The oil produced stays local, cooks local food, circulates local income. For the first time, the oil press levy isn't capturing value for foreign feedstocks, it's reinvested locally. These are the subtle yet powerful flips, from dependency to agency, from export-driven to community-driven, from we sell raw to we process and keep value. The narrative of helping Africa shifts to Africa helping itself. The resistance and challenges. No bold shift goes unchallenged. What stood in the way? Change of this scale seldom proceeds smoothly. As the ban rolled out, some importers cried foul. Subsidized import contracts lobbied for exceptions. Some farmers still clung to the imported feed regime because local processing was new and untested. Infrastructure gaps, roads, storage, market linkages remained. Climate vulnerability still loomed, droughts, pests, market shocks. And the question remained, can domestic production scale fast enough to replace years of import dependency? But the government pivoted strategy, buying local output at floor prices, ensuring storage and transport incentives, and forging regional trade harmonization so that surpluses in one country feed deficits in another. The battle was as much policy as field work. The twist, a new export path? The story takes an unexpected turn. What if the real goal isn't just replacing imports, but creating a new export power? Here's the twist. While the ban's primary aim was food sovereignty, emerging signs show Burkina Faso and its regional partners are eyeing not just self-sufficiency but new export markets. Raw beans, oil, processed feedstocks destined for the Middle East and Asia. The same global players who once supplied cheap food may now find African-grown supplies reaching their markets. If this reverse flow grows, the old model of Africa as mere recipient becomes outdated. In other words, the ban was only the first act. The second act is rewriting Africa's role from commodity consumer to value chain, producer and exporter. Why it matters for you. You might think soybeans in Burkina Faso is distant, but it matters more than you realize. Whether you're eating plant-based burgers in New York, keeping chickens in rural Bangladesh, or buying cooking oil in Dhaka, soybeans impact you. Global food chains ripple across continents. If one region shifts the rules, it can influence prices, availability, trade balances, and even climate resilience. The move by Burkina Faso echoes into the rights of farmers, the value of processing industries, the power of trade policy, and the future of agriculture worldwide. So this isn't just a regional story, it's a test case. If Africa can turn from importer to self-reliant value creator, then what seemed impossible becomes possible. And once that door opens, many others might follow. The conclusion, from dependency to agency. The real victory isn't whether the harvest succeeds, but whether the mindset shifts. The story of Burkina Faso's soybean pivot is more than an agricultural policy. It is a statement. The world's food architecture can be questioned. The value chain can be localized. The importer can become the producer. President Traoré's phrase rings true. We are not withdrawing from the world. We are returning to ourselves. The point isn't isolation, it's recalibration, both in field and in mindset. As the first shipments of Burkina grown, processed soybean products begin to move to neighboring states and beyond, the world watches, because the question is no longer, Can Africa feed itself? The question now is, can Africa feed the world on its own terms? And here's the final twist. The real war isn't over soybeans. It's over who writes the rule book of the global food economy, and the answer emerging from West Africa is, the rule book is being rewritten. And if this experiment succeeds, then this small nation's humble fields might have sown the seeds of a continental shift, and your dinner plate might just be changed in ways you never expected. Thank you for joining us on this journey into one of the most underreported but high-stakes movements in global agriculture. If you found this interesting, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell to explore more stories where food, power, and sovereignty meet. Until next time, stay curious, stay alert, because the future of food is being grown where you least expected it.